On Saturday, July 22nd, 2023, I was honored to be asked to moderate What's Next, a panel for the future in puppetry at the National Puppetry Festival. I sat down with puppeteers Rachel Burson, Andrew A. Cano, and Matthew Lish to talk about their careers in puppetry and where they see the art form going in the future. I'm happy to share that audio with you now on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet.
Rachel Burson is a puppet builder, puppet wrangler, and puppeteer based in Los Angeles. She has worked for the Jim Henson Creature Shop, Swazzle, Nickelodeon Noggin, and the Muppet Studio. She owns her own puppetry business, Rachel Main Studio, and you've seen her work on projects such as Muppets Mayhem, Waffles and Mochi, Slumberkins, Duff's Happy Fun Bake Time, Crankakers, The Barbarian, and The Troll, and she was recently featured in a Vistaprint commercial. Rachel Burson! Matthew Lish is a New York City-based puppeteer, puppet and prop fabricator, and designer and storyteller who has worked on various projects at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, including work on Sesame Street, Rockefeller Productions, and Disney's Winnie the Pooh. That's how it's written. He's worked on various Broadway and off-Broadway shows, and he works for the global themed entertainment team at Sesame Workshop, creating themed experiences with the Sesame Street brand and cast of characters around the world. He's also a former Walt Disney Imagineer. Please welcome Matthew Lish. Andrew A. Cano began performing at the Disneyland Resort beginning in 2012 all the way up to now. He had a shift this morning. He held several performing roles at the resort and was featured in shows and meet and greets, and his favorite was as the puppeteer of Miguel in A Celebration of Coco, a show at Disney California Adventure Park. He's worked for Disney Cruise Lines. He took the Jim Henson Workshop. He's performed in Puppet Up, and he landed the role of Ricardo, Rosita's father, on Sesame Street. Please welcome Andrew A. Cano. I always like to, whenever I do these interviews, I always like to ask, do you remember your first exposure to puppetry, the first time you saw puppets?
Oh, don't do that. Hi. Oh gosh, my most vivid memory, I obviously must have grown up with Sesame Street because I know I watched some of it. My first vivid memory about puppetry is that I wanted the Tickle Me Big Bird more than anything. Say Tickle Me Elmo, and I was like, get him out of here. Where's Tickle Me Big Bird? And he showed up, and my dad got it for me, and I coveted that Tickle Me Big Bird. I loved him. So that was probably, it's not like puppet, but yeah, here you go, Big Bird.
Hi everybody, this is really wonderful to be here. My first exposure to puppetry was probably Sesame Street as well. I was immediately drawn to Oscar the Grouch to the point that my favorite thing to play as a child was Oscar, and my parents bought a little plastic recycling can that was this big, and I would sit in it for hours and take shoes and newspapers and just sit in there in my trash can for hours. So it was mostly Sesame Street, plus of course, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and reruns of Shari Lewis. So those were my first things.
I too was a PBS kid, and so growing up on Sesame Street and Between the Lions, and my personal favorite is The Puzzle Place. Yeah, I love Puzzle Place. But one of the first times that I was like, wait, I want a puppet, was for some reason I happened upon this show called Nana Pudding. Have you ever heard of it?
I think
With
so.
Dennis Lee. So basically there's a monkey puppet, he's a ventriloquist. And yeah, there was this number that you would call so that you can get coloring books and pens, and it came with a puppet, and I begged my aunt, I was like, please, you have to call this number. It's only 3 installments of $19.99, right? There's no whole pitch. But she never did, so I don't talk to her. I know, that could have, my career could have been like
We, Rachel, you are a builder, and so were you, when you were getting into building, was it you wanted to do puppets and so you learned how to build puppets, or were you just like, no, I want to figure out how these are built and I want to start building them?
You know, it's funny. I started because I got a BFA in stage management, so I started with that and was doing an internship at a children's theater, and we rented some puppets, and I was like looking for some sort of artistic like outlet at that point, and we rented these puppets, and like they were okay. They were okay, and I was like, you know what? I wonder if I could do a better job. So I bought the phone book written by Burson and right? And I bought that book, and I literally sat on it for a year because I was so scared to try to build. And then I was like unemployed in Cincinnati, and I was like, well, if I'm gonna build that puppet, now's the time. And that kind of started everything. So I really was interested in the process of it, of the like being able to actually physically touch something and figure out what it actually takes to manipulate materials to make them actually make the shape and like do the thing that you like want it to do. And so that was really the unlocking there was the puzzle that comes with each build. That was really the spark. It was great.
And what was your first puppet that you built, if you remember?
Oh, I built it for an anime convention, and it was Midna from Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess.
And you still have it?
My mother does. It scares my nieces.
Matthew, your Instagram handle has the word juggler in it, and you say that you worked with Ringling Brothers. I would love to know more about your time as a clown with Ringling Brothers.
Sure. So I come from a circus family. My father went to clown college. I'm a second-generation circus performer. And growing up, I had two goals. I want to tour with the circus. I want to work with the Muppets. And I'm very fortunate that I got to do both. But I started performing alongside my father when I was 3 years old. I learned to juggle 3.5 years old. And that, working with my father and performing more in a variety of arts sense, and circus and magic and clowning, that type of thing, kind of paved the way eventually for puppetry, because we were always building our own magic props, our own circus props, carving big clown props, big hammers out of foam. So there was a natural progression there. Getting on to Ringling, when I graduated from high school, I had already been like, you know, dead set on auditioning, and was offered a spot to join The Greatest Show on Earth right out of high school. I had accepted a scholarship to go to college, and if I had deferred, I would have lost the scholarship to go to college. So it was like, financially, I need to go to college. I want to go to the circus, but I need to go to college. So I told the circus, no, for now, but I will be back. And they assured me that the circus was not going anywhere and would not be closing ever. Hold on. So I went and I did a year of college, and then at that point, once I had done a year and did really well and was like already secured in the system, then I was able to take the leave of absence and go join Ringling Brothers Barnum Bailey Circus as a clown. 4 days after I arrived at the circus was when they announced that the show would be closing after 145 plus years. But I had the best time, and in those 5.5 months, and then returned back to normal civilization after that. But it was a really, really wonderful experience. Taught me a lot about performing, taught me a lot about working with other cultures, about working with a large ensemble of 400 people. So it was a really wonderful experience. I can't recommend joining the circus enough.
Well, Andrew, I know that with your work at the Disney Park, you have, you've of course done puppets with Miguel and other projects as well. But you also have done some of the costume work there. How does that, or you're a helper to some of the characters? That's Disney talk, I guess. But how do you think that doing that so much has helped your puppetry?
I think a lot of it comes from making informed decisions, right? And thinking on the fly, because every interaction is going to be different. So in terms of, I guess, through like improv and situational improv, you're just kind of taking it as it comes along, especially with like Miguel, right? am technically not Miguel. Miguel is a puppet, and I am there to assist Miguel, but I'm puppeteering him at the same time. And so it's including him and the guest in our interaction. So if they come up and they just want to talk about, their dead dog, we can, because it celebrates Dia de los Muertos. Or if they want to talk about the food that they just had or the ride that they just went on. And so I have things that I know that I'm going to talk about, and then they bring whatever they bring. And so I'm able to use kind of the improv skills, really. And a lot of the informed acting, because every character is different. So I know with Miguel, I can pull things about Dia de los Muertos, I can pull things about food, because his family loves tamales, who doesn't? And then he has a dog as well, so if people want to talk about dogs. So it helps a lot with character specificity and themed language too, right? Because he's from Mexico, so I can use phrases in Spanish and in English, and it's very, it's very fun.
Excellent. I always like asking people I talk to, puppeteers I talk to, and Matthew, I think we know a little bit about this, but I would love to know a little bit more from all of you, of course, but Matthew kind of hinted at it, were your parents creative at all? Did you get any of this creative stuff from your parents, or were your parents like, why are you getting into puppets? What are you doing? What were your parents' thoughts? Anyone can start.
Everyone looked at me, I'll start. No, my family was not creative. My mother was an accountant, and my dad was a manager of a CVS. That was what they both did until they retired. So yeah, I'm the only creative. Sorry, I had too much fun at the festival, so I'm a little scratchy. But that's why, but yeah, I was the one creative person to come out of my immediate family. My sister works in insurance. My brother's a teacher in Japan. So they don't know where it came from. My mom is like great at painting and stuff, but it was never something she was interested in actually pursuing. And my dad's really good at math, so I don't know. It's a mystery.
I've been very fortunate. My parents have been extremely supportive of puppetry endeavors and creative endeavors. My dad has been a great collaborator of mine for many years, especially when I was a child, in helping me get set up with, encouraging me to take up books from the library, or talking through ideas with me, or sketching things with me, or helping experiment with stuff we found, at flea markets or thrift stores. So it's always been a super collaborative process, and I'm very lucky that we continue doing that today, helping each other with projects.
I did not have that experience. My dad's an electrician, and my mom was a preschool teacher. And there's just culturally a lot of music and arts, but as far as theater, my parents were like, what do you mean? You want to go to theater school and do what? Act? And then throw in puppets on top of that. They're like, puppets? Are you sure? And I'm like, yes. Recently, when I was on Sesame Street, I had done something, and Leslie Rudolph helped me. She was like, do you want to send a video back to your family? And I was like, yes, oh my gosh, that's so great. And so I grabbed the puppet and I did a video, and she was like, okay, look back on it, make sure it's good, you like it, if not, we can redo it. And I was like, okay. And I was watching it back, and I just started crying, because it was one of those things where I told, Leslie was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just, Leslie, I did it. Sorry, I'm crying. No, but it's one of those things where I'm like, I love my family, they're very supportive now, right? But it was one of those things that I'm sure you can all attest to this as artists, you see the vision. I always saw myself as a puppeteer, as an actor, as a performer in general, and so, being able to fulfill that in that moment, was so good and, full circle for me. So, yeah, it was
Well, all three of you have experience working in theater, theatrical stuff, as well as TV, film, that area. And I would love to know if you have a preference for either one, and maybe an experience from one of those things that makes you have that preference, if that question makes sense. So if you prefer theater, some story from theater that you really love, or vice versa for TV. We'll start with Andrew. We'll go back down. Yeah.
Stop looking at me.
I love theater. Television and film is great. I mean, I'm fairly newer to it, but it's one of those things where it takes so long to finish, right? So there was something that I did like a year ago that still hasn't come out, so I can't even talk about it because I'm like, it doesn't exist, right? And yeah, there's something about doing live performances, especially, so for me at Disney, we had a show called Disney Junior Live on Stage that featured puppets of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, yeah, I know. Doc McStuffins, my favorite. Jake and Neverland Pirates, and Sophia the First. And so doing those live stage shows 6 times a day was so helpful for me because I would get to see other peers perform in these roles, and I could like take different things that they would do, and then in the next show, because we would switch around, I would get to do them too, and try my hand at it to be like, oh, okay, if Donald's eyes, like, they do this little half-eye thing when he gets upset, or he crosses his arms, I was like, okay, I want to try that. And if it doesn't work, great, but there's another show happening at 4:30. So I love the aspect of that, and also the growing, because we toured a show, yes. And in doing those shows so often in the morning for kids, like you learn like the little like secondhand. You start having a second hand with people, and I feel like with television and film, it can grow to that, but it's so quick. You rehearse, you do it, and then you kind of move on. That you don't really get to have that experience. So I love theater so much for that. Yeah, that learning experience.
Yeah, excellent.
I'm gonna loop live theater in with theme parks and like strolling entertainment and atmospheric performances in theme parks. That's generally more what I gravitate towards because there is an immediate reaction. You can understand the effect you're having very, very, very quickly. When we were doing the Winnie the Pooh musical in New York City, when we did the first off-Broadway run, at the beginning of the show, Eeyore somberly walks out. Is Emmanuel here?
No,
Is he here? Did he leave? Okay.
Now we can
you
really
saw,
talk about it. Go ahead.
The Eeyore puppeteer was performing earlier today. There's a moment in the show when Eeyore comes out and he's looking for his house, which is on the other side of the stage, and then the house, like, there's a big gust of wind and the house collapses. And he's looking for his house. And there was this moment in one show where some little girl in like the 4th row like picked up her Eeyore plush, held it above her head, and just started screaming, "Eeyore, it's over there. Go to the house. Eeyore, it's right over there. Go find it." And then throughout the show, whenever he'd come back, would be like, "Hi, Eeyore, there's your house." And kind of getting that immediate, like, oh, we're doing something cool here, and this is really resonating with people, is really, really exciting. That being said, please continue to hire me for your TV and film projects. Very happy to work on them.
Shameless plug. My heart will always be with theater, because that's where I found my creative home for the first time, and there's no like high better than watching a live audience respond to like what you're doing on stage or what you've created on stage, because you get to actually feel that energy roll, and that's like so, it's like the best feeling. But I have so much like deep love and passion for the film and TV side of things, because there's so much detail and minutia that's required, because the camera's right here in your puppet's face. You know, if there's a string that's out of place or something's not looking right, it's apparent like immediately. And also, because I work a lot, like as a builder, but I also wrangle on set where you like take care of the puppets and rig them and all that. And it gives you a fast pass to like the directors and the producers and the DPs on set. And so you get to build this really interesting, unique relationship with these people who are trying to build this vision block by block, because you have to film scene by scene. And so it's interesting, and also the problem solving never ends when you're on a film and TV production. With theater, you kind of do it all up front, and then you handle things as they come along. But with film and TV, you never stop solving the problem. So again, I guess it goes back to the puzzle thing, that you're always finding a solution to something. And that is really, it makes it fun to go to work, even though it's like a 12 to 14 hour day, every day.
Well, not right now. That's the strike.
Right.
With the theme of this festival has been generations, and we've talked about past, present, and you guys are the future. Sorry, you folks are the future. I I would love to know who some of your mentors or who some of your heroes that you look up to are in the world of puppetry.
Oh, in the world of puppetry. Okay.
Well, it could be you. I mean, if you want to say anybody, you can say anybody, but it's a puppetry festival, so.
Sure. In puppetry, in terms of mentors, Raleigh Cruson and Connie Peterson helped me a tremendous amount and really helped me figure out, hey, you should be doing it this way. Like, let's help steer you this way. And really taught me a lot of the fundamental basics. Laura McLean taught me a lot about wrangling and how to work on set. And then in terms of overall big figures, I do look up to Don Celine a lot, one of the people that I wish I had the opportunity to meet. And then outside of puppetry, looking at like Walt Disney Imagineers, like Rolly Crump and Blaine Gibson and Mark Davis, you know, the people behind The Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean, these people who were masters of storytelling and of character development and really figuring out how to best display an idea, an emotion, a character, an experience to an audience. And I think those are all things we could take back in puppetry. So those are my big people.
Sure. My, I guess, beginning mentors were definitely the Swazzle brothers because they were the first guys that gave me my first professional shop gig. So I got a lot of my foundation from them, and then through them was able to lateral move over to like the Jim Henson Creature Shop where I worked with like Andrea Detweiler and Scott Johnson and Jurgen Ferguson, and I feel like none of them would ever admit to that they've had this kind of impact on my life because they're all so casual and generous with the information that they've always had, and they don't realize just what kind of mentors that they've become. And it's great to be just in that sort of, just to be in the halo of information that these people have that they give so willingly. And then like recently I'm up, it's like even like Jane Gutnick, she liked me, and I learned how to be a better artist with her, and I learned how to stand up for myself in a way that I've never been able to before. So Jane's got my heart.
Tyler Budge. No, in 2019, I went to the O'Neill conference in person, and I had auditioned for the diversity workshop at Henson a few years before that. And one of the things is you go up and you would go with somebody else. So I had Alan Troutman was there with me, and so we did this improv scene. We did about like 3 of them together, and I tanked so hard. But that's good because then I got to realize, oh, I need help in my improv. And so back to 2019 when I went to the O'Neill, Tyler was doing these pop-up improv like classes, and I went to every single one of them because I was like, that's the guy who knows puppets and improv. I need to go see that guy. And so I went to every single one of them, and it's funny because after that, I kept saying to people, I would be like, oh yeah, my mentor, like not mentor, Tyler Bunch. Because in my mind, I was just like, that's my mentor and that's who I look up to. And then later on, yeah, he kind of did become like a mentor to me, especially with all this stuff going on with like Ricardo and my first day at Sesame and all of that stuff. So yeah, he just has such a good mind with the puppetry, all the techniques, the acting that's required to do some of the emotional stuff that Ricardo does, because Ricardo's he is differently abled. He uses a wheelchair to get around. And in one of the first scenes in auditioning, he talks about how just because he doesn't play soccer the same or dance the same, his love for Rosita, his daughter, will always stay the same. And so, yeah, just Tyler gets it. He gets all of that, and I really look up to that. And even the business side of this. Like, we don't really get to talk about some of the business aspects, right? Of contracts and all this other stuff, and it's really tricky to navigate, right? Because you're like, I just want to perform, I just want to be on stage. But there's a whole business side of this that is needed, and his mind for all of that, amazing. Him and Carmen, who plays Rosita, just being a part of Sesame Street for 30 plus years, coming to a new country, because she's from Mexico, and I look up to her so much because I'm also being Mexican. Like, I look up and don't really see a lot of people who look like me on stage. Yeah, so now that there's like more stuff, I saw the Migrations show and I just started crying afterwards because I was like, that's it. Like, we're here, we exist in these theater arts, and I think that was a big thing too with my parents, like growing up, that they're like, well, we're Mexican, we don't really do this kind of stuff, we don't do entertainment, we don't go into any of this stuff. But now I can be like, no, yes we do, like we are here, and we're gonna continue telling our stories. So, yeah.
Excellent. I'm very excited to see, with Tyler as a mentor, what facial hair you will end up with. It'll be very, yeah. Now, puppetry is one of the oldest art forms, if not the oldest. Are there any modern technologies that you would love to see kind of applied or used towards to puppetry? And it could be anything like 3D printing, or probably get booed AI, whatever. What is there anything that's exciting? Like, hey, no one's done this with puppetry. I want to give it a try of doing that.
We've seen a lot in theme park development over the past decade or so, increased advancements in projection mapping, and the level of specificity that projection mapping can be. Whereas like a decade ago, it was like, we're just gonna like project this image of a pumpkin onto this wall. And now it's very much, we can project it, we can move it, we can get it to go around complex surfaces and stuff like that. So the intersection of projection mapping and lighting in general with puppetry, and I believe Life of Pi on Broadway touches upon this a good amount, but to figure out more of where that intersection of complex projection mapping of complicated moving surfaces along with puppetry.
Okay.
I agree.
I agree. Okay, great. What is so far in your career, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned? The biggest thing, like where you've done something and you're like, okay, I won't do that again. Or, I'm trying to couch this as in a positive light. But what lesson have you learned that, so far?
I'll go first. My biggest lesson is if it's not working, stop. Just stop and fix it now. Don't wait till you get too far down the line, because then you have to rip it all out to fix the thing that you knew you should have fixed beforehand, but you didn't want to because you hoped it was going to work, but it just didn't work.
Two things. When building, your blades are going to go duller way faster than you think they're going to.
Unless it's going into your hand.
That's true. The other thing, and I think this never changes, but what I learned and figured out much younger was that your taste in what you want to see and the things you're trying to create is often much higher than your skill level to do that. And as you continue to progress, hopefully that gap gets significantly smaller, but that gap is also necessary for growth. So you're going to get closer to what you imagine doing with time, but hopefully you're always like, oh, I want to do something cooler and cooler and cooler, or I don't know how to do that, I'm going to keep pushing myself. But to not get frustrated by the fact that you can't do it, what is in your head is not exactly what you're able to produce.
My biggest lesson is to listen to your body, especially because of all the stuff that I do for Disney as well. There have been moments where I have to tell them like, hi, I cannot perform in this. This is way too heavy for me. But yeah, it's very important to stretch. Even when you think, oh, I'll just be doing this for a little bit. No, you have to stretch, warm up, and cool down as well. Because then later you're carrying around a tennis ball everywhere you go now. But yeah, I think it's very important to stretch and make sure that you're honest with yourself and you're like, okay, should I push this a little further? Maybe not. I need some water, right? Because we all get caught up in the frenzy of like, we're performing and we're doing this live and I keep pushing, but then you kind of burn out and that sort of thing, and your body will make you rest.
All right, well, as we wrap up here, the final question I always love to ask is, what has been the highlight of your career so far?
The first day of Muppets Mayhem, everybody was running around and acting like nothing special was going on, but Animal was right in front of me. And Animal was my nickname when I was a kid, and he was the first Muppet that I made sure that I ever touched. And that will always be with me forever.
First day walking onto the set of Sesame Street without a guest pass. And I say that jokingly, but it was a very emotional thing to walk in and not be like, oh, I don't know where the restroom is. And to feel like I had a very, 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 very minuscule place in this gigantic machine was super, super special to me to be there on that day.
Performing in Puppet Up at Knott's, because we all have these chairs, the director chairs, and they have our names on them. And they're like, well, what name do you want it to say? Because my legal name is Andres, with an accent over the E. And I told them to put that. And they're like, okay, even though professionally I go by Andrew Cano. And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, yes. And then my parents came to watch the show, and they saw the name that they gave me right there in printed letters, Andres. So to me, that was a highlight for them, kind of full circle to be like, we're here, we made it, I'm real.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for taking the time to share your journey with us. We really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, Andrew A. Cano, Matthew Lish, and Rachel Burson.
My thanks to Andrew A. Cano, Matthew Lish, and Rachel Burson for being on this episode. For links to my guests on social media, check out the show notes for this episode, episode 90, over at underthepuppet.com. I'd also like to thank Dustin Curtis, Julia Schemmer, the National Puppetry Festival, and the Puppeteers of America for their help on this episode. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. I want to send out a special thank you to all of the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make the show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout-out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Andrew Calcagno, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Paul, Scott Armstrong, and Vicky Sebring. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up your monthly support today. And thank you for your support. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, call our voicemail line at 818-806-9604 or click the Call the Show button in the free Under the Puppet app for iOS and Android. You can also send feedback via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was expertly edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2023 Saturday Morning Media Grandpa Choco executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. Under the Puppet proudly presents The Adventures of Timmy the Tooth Reunion. In this almost 90-minute video, you will hear great stories from the cast and crew who brought this amazing puppet show to life. Plus, you'll see never-before-seen artwork and exclusive behind-the-scenes video. Under the Puppet's Timmy the Tooth Reunion is available right now at timmy.underthepuppet.com.